Good afternoon. Let's get started our session. It's very interesting: geological targeting and assessments of resources for the investment-related risks reduction. It's a hot topic, and you will hear a lot today. And we try to focus in our presentations on some issues and potential solutions. In today's presentation, we have two group of companies, IGT, with 5 businesses engaged in exploration. We've been doing it in Russia for 20 years. And this year we launched our business in Kazakhstan. And another company is a Kepler Group based on Almaz Geo. Since 1998, it's been active and operational, and they established its subsidiary to develop the new businesses. Let me review the situation as of now. We live in a paradigm when the humanity is eating its resources, the resources that have been explored and proved by the previous generation. I'm familiar with the situation both in Russia, in Kazakhstan. Resources are becoming a state level, turning into a state level problem. The problem is faced by the government and businesses. The major trend that we have identified relates to the scarcity of resources, and it impacts the quality of resources that are left. We will kind of make a statement or a thesis that not everything is that bad. We got used to the facts, got used to rely on the governments, which is responsible for the social issues, but at the same time, exploration that has been a source of income for many years is now getting to be segmented as a individual business. On the one hand, everyone is interested in investments, and investors are interested to invest. While the investment market isn't easy, it presents challenges. On the one hand, on the other hand, we have a huge amount of geological data which is available and not processed. It's been accumulated, but sometimes due to the lack of willingness or the lack of resources is not being processed properly and utilized properly. The government has to control expenses, and it's one of the challenges and tasks of the governments. And the independence of the government relies on the resource base. And another painful issue is the cost of investments mistakes. And the major problem here includes mistakes that occurred at an early stage of exploration, which impact the future of the projects. You see this map. Map is generated through the database of the state-owned database of control of subsoil resources. Uh, it's not quite relevant. It's not up to date. It's dated 2022, but the pink color stands for the areas which are license-free, as a kind of an indicator suggesting that Kazakhstan has entered a new era of investment activity with a space for operation. But what creates obstacles to subsoil users and investors? One of the examples, one of the cases here in Karaganda region, in Shetsky rayon, you see the dots standing for mineralization process, increased mineralization, excessive mineralization, or deposits, discovered ore deposits. But these projects are not developed. But here we should think about the risks. Are there many investors who would be interested to invest into unclear, unpredictable, high risk projects? We can compare it with the situation where a person is contemplating of buying an airplane ticket for the aircraft, which has 3% guarantee to outreach the final destination. Since 1990 until 2020, over 30 years, we've been witnessing a situation that's in the background of the reduction of public investments, the goals and objectives and surplus of resources discoveries has been performed by the juniors. In Western countries, the situation isn't new. In post-Soviet countries, it relates to a new culture. We've been learning from them, learning about the new approaches and new experience. But from dynamics shown in this slide, you can see how effective the juniors can be in the development of the resource base. This diagram shows the number of discoveries since over almost 120 years. The dynamics shows the popularity of specific methods. The reds and orange colors stand for the geophysical methods. Distance-based methods are also important. Geophysics is critical, is important, but not critical. And all discoveries taking place through direct methods by studying the minerals. Academic Smirnov, who is known as a field guy because he dedicated his life to exploration, and even having been a professor, he went to the field to formulate and ultimately formulated the statement that the base of easily discovered minerals is almost exhausted, and we can deal with the ore bodies which cannot be easily discovered. This is his statement. And after 80 years since the statements, we still continue to discover, and we are doing quite well. It relates to basically due to the industrial progress, technological progress, human resources capacities. Although we need to admit that the exploration process has become more complex and challenging due to uncertainties as well. And once we deal with one uncertainty, it can be can become exponentially increasing. Risks in geological exploration, one of the key factor for investors. Risks is a set of uncertain events or conditions that can negatively impact its ultimate result of the project. Productivity of geological exploration projects relies and depends on the risks, on the burden of the risks. There are many risks in geology, and they may include geological risks, logistics, infrastructure, engineering, marketing situation, environmental, legal aspects, and so on. So we understand that there's a whole array where one element can impact another. Nevertheless, as we are progressing, we are learning from our experience, from our projects, from each other. And there's no any company that would make a commitment to play a blind game. They all use at the launch of any project. They mostly focus on the assessment of geological risks because they are kind of basic risks in our business. At this stage, our idea is to reduce the number of uncertainties. Among oil specialists, we have four grades: the zone of maximum and high risk, highly going from high risks, the red one, to the green one, low risks. In our geological targeting operations, when we move through the steps, which will be later presented by my colleagues, out of these four grades, four levels, we try to turn them into three segments or levels. By our analysis, we try to achieve at least the orange level, the yellow level of risks. But we do understand that the later it takes to investor to decide whether they enter into the project or not, the higher the cost of the entry ticket. Therefore, we sometimes use the rule of thumb with the 60% of the database and data available for the analysis. We still need to make a decision. What are the common diseases we suffer? Within the last 25, 30 years, we have been witnessing the juniors entering the market based on geological risks, and managers try to stay away from the basic risks, ignore the risks sometimes when they decide to enter into the project. The benefits are well known. They are mobile, they quick decision makers, they have a short financial shoulder, From analysis that we have made on the companies globally, we still concluded that we all have diseases that are common. Juniors, they have higher expectations. They use occasionally they use abstract and not reliable resources, assessment of resources. They underestimate the importance of archives. The Soviet mining school has been forming for almost 60 years, and in the Russian database we have almost 29 million of pieces of pieces of data in archives. In Kazakhstan, I think we can compare ourselves with them. And also the lack of qualification, and investors try to skip the exploration season, exploration steps, which in geology is unforgivable. We, as the managers of the projects at the later stage, we stand and observe how the situation would evolve. The lack of skilled professionals is another problem, another challenge both for us and for the Russian Federation. We've been working with many colleagues, I would say closely with almost 10 or 12 countries. And we share the challenges. Another problem relates to the neglect or disregard of the modern technologies. They try to save finances and end up having to deal with the less attractive projects in financial standpoint. The goals of geological targeting can be compared with the ongoing state of arm wrestling, where we try to improve our effectiveness in terms of managing finances, managing resources, especially at initial phases. And most important here is to improve the accuracy and reliability of the data that we collect. Objective geological and economic assessments will be addressed by my colleagues. The main idea is to reduce the early phase related risks, which would allow to optimize the finances at a later stage. And I think I will pass the floor to my colleague for the most interesting part. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. I'll continue the geological targeting focus. You all know what target means, and exploration targeting is one of the methods which is common all over the world, and we try to keep pace with it, bringing some individual elements and technologies into this approach. How the exploration targeting is different from other exploration approaches. Parameters and objectives. We try to make a focus of the prospects for a specific field, for specific deposit. Once we decide on the targeting as a business solution, we try to find the data and information which falls outside of our criteria, saving time and money. Different companies have different targeting objectives. From our experience, the most demandable includes copper deposits, gold deposits, ore and gold, and IOCG facilities such as Olympic Dam in Australia. But we also have smaller targets. When we analyze geological data based on the open data, we created these pyramids of the value of data.
At the base, we see an orange block. This is primary data, data in archives and reports. This is what our predecessors collected. The second block at the base is geographical routes and what we call field reconnaissance. The things that enable us to see whether this is a fit for us or not. The things that are higher up are also important, but you cannot have the top without the bottom. You will have less precision. So it's all about the base. Effectiveness of targeting. A few examples. For instance, Malmösh. I worked jointly with my Russian colleagues. The failed Dodge company entered into the Russian market and we worked with it. So the idea was that they needed a deposit that would have at least 2 million of tons, and it would also be nice for it to have gold. So we started working, so we understood that we would be working with an area of 1 square kilometers. We went through all the reports that were available, analyzed the conclusions drawn by our predecessors, picked 200 areas, then we ranked them, narrowed it down to 40 ones, did field visits with helicopters or by foot. We went there, we studied them, and thus we picked 5. One of them was Malmösh. Currently Malmösh belongs to a Russian copper company. This is a world-class deposit, and I think these reserves will double with time, with new discoveries. So the thing is, as we purchased a license and started drilling, we did assessment. And our assessment was that it had potentially up to 5 million tons of copper and some gold, which was in line with the assessment made during the exploration. And overall we saw that it would amount to more than 10 million tons, and we see that current assessments are in line with that, but this number may increase in the future. A great example indeed. And back in the Soviet times, there were done detailed works, 10,000 ones for gold, and the result was negative. So despite it having been negative, we were able to do proper job, discover copper there. So here you can see a map with different targets. Yellow is gold, green is copper, blue is zinc, and this is Russia, Central Asia, Mongolia. So we have implemented our own technology, embedded it into geological targeting. Here you can see that there are 3 stages to targeting. Each of them is quite important. So the first one is the preliminary targeting. This is when you analyze all materials that are available. Then you do field trips, and then you provide recommendations for licensing, or if it has been licensed, this area has been licensed before, then you do recommendations. We use drones as well as other technologies. The goal is to establish a GIS project of our own, where we would upload data to, and this is what enables us to digest this information, so we'll be uploading everything to that system. And we will also add in all kinds of reports and dissertations. So here are the layers that we have here. Usually there will be at least 10 of those, up to 70. So, as you do geological targeting, you work at different scales: regional, medium, large. And we also focus on structural analysis. Why? Because it's all about the structure. The other factors are secondary to that. At the regional level, we identify ore trends and ore structures. Then at the medium level, we try to get the scale right and identify geological exploration corridors. Field trips and reconnaissance. This is when we do our studies based on our predecessors' works. So we pick some areas and do some novel research, paying special attention to the structure. Here's the Spasskaya copper area. I used to work there. I know that area quite well. Then we do what we call ranking. So we create a table called target tracker. You can see an example of such table on the screen. So we weigh all factors, we do the ranking to get the ones that hold the most promise to the top, and Malmysh held the first place since the very beginning and has never lost it. The criteria that we use are well known. So, how much metal ore contains, we use various computer-based assessments. We look at the morphology, the kinematics, things like that. So the more criteria you use, the better, the more robust your assessment is. An example of how to run comparisons. So to the left you have Khabarovsk. This is where Malmysh is. So it's quite a large area, 788,000 square kilometers. Second one is Spasskaya in Kazakhstan. The area is much smaller, only 14,000 square kilometers. So what do we see here? So we start with several dozens of deposits, but after we have done the work in the field, it gets narrowed down to only a few, which means you need to go there and see it yourself. Because reading one reports is good, especially when you have people with expertise that enables them to do that, but you need to go to the field. And of course, discovering a large deposit is statistically less likely than discovering a smaller one. That's why in that case we require more information than we would otherwise. This means that investors need to put in the money, to spend enough money on the geologists, because they will get good return on their investment. Methodology. Any targeting is based on geological models. We have a good understanding of those. The good thing about models is that they take into account the characteristics of this or that deposit. At the same time, I remember working at BHP company back in the 90s. There was Noel White, renowned geologist. I remember him giving lectures, and what he said was, well, models are good, but once you get down to business, just forget about it. And this is the motto that I have. So once you get to the field, you don't use any models at all. Once you've done your work, then you get back to the models and see if there is correlation or not. So, as we started doing surveys, the company invited a renowned expert in geology. So he went there, we gave them a tour, and he said, well, guys, you're not going to have a large deposit here, because this is what the model says. And we were no experts, but we got Mark to agree to talk him into continuing this work, and fortunately he listened to us, not the expert. And well, I think in the end someone would have discovered Malmysh anyway. But in our case, the thing is that despite all the negatives, forecasts and models, we were able to deliver. So since targeting requires data, it means that science needs to be done. And science is based on methodologies. Methodologies that enable you to collect data properly, to interpret it, to synthesize, and then to give outputs. And one of the methods we use is the methods of analogs. Quite often it is misused. That people say that, well, it looks like that the other thing, and that's why it must be the same. But before you do that, you need to do a proper study into the nature of your deposit. And because if you work properly, then you will not have any illusions or fantasies, so long as it is done properly. And as Dmitry has said earlier, targeting is useful indeed, allows one to save money, to decrease costs and risks, and also increases the chances of discovering a deposit. Our company, we use the standard toolkit. At the same time, we have embedded some tools of our own. So, we need to show us this not voodoo or something like that. We just want to give a presentation to develop an understanding of how it works. So we have the ability to use hyperspectral data. Here's our spectrum. We have a variety of satellite data with frequency band of their own. They vary. Here's a comparison. Sentinel, Landsat, ETM. So we applied worldview to it to get this comparison. So for instance, MODIS works a lot in the visible spectrum. That's why it is used for natural resources, weather conditions, fire risks. It's based on things such as vegetation, leaf index. As for the medium range, this is mineralogy, and worldview in this case is used to have both. Astra enables us to use thermal data in addition to that. So we see different spectrums, we compare those. Here you see the picture for minerals which we often work on in the field, such as cerussite, muscovite, kaolinite, and based on those we see somatic changes in the rock. And when we set tasks, we need to have understanding of what issues we are supposed to tackle, because if we use worldview or HiMap, then we'll have a high definition, but we will have to work with massive amounts of data. If we use hyperspectral data, the spectrometers, then we receive a spectrum without any interruptions, and those can be used to work on any mineral with high precision. If we use satellite data that only have some channels covered, then we'll have only certain frequencies, not all of them. And in that case, we'll try to use absorption and deabsorption characteristics to run analysis. Here you see it's channel 6, channel 7, as well as channel 1, 3 and 5 to calculate the spectrum characteristics. So both sets of data need to be used. For them to make each other more precise. So once we've identified a target, we can get more detailed information on that. For instance, if we are interested in the zonal vector, we can run the necessary calculation. Here are the indexes that are used for Astor. You could run some calculations and change them to align with worldview. So there are some minor differences. All in all, the key thing is that we have the ability to perform analysis. We use normalized indexes such as the vegetation one, hydroxyl one. Here you have only 7 or 8 of those, but in reality there is more, and you can even create indexes of your own, and you know that In the literature, there are dozens and dozens of those available for you to use based on your needs. An example, it's area to the west of Balkash Lake.
Можно, помимо того, что мы выделяем,
We can identify each index, and we can also combine all of them. OGB software allows us to combine, and we can see some metasomatic changes, and it's been a good target for our field exploration works. We have seen advanced archaeological changes with intrusive layers, which are perspective for exploration. This deposit is another example where we applied indexes. If you use them well using the masks, you will find you will very clearly be able to see proper light zones, changes in temperatures. It's evenly distributed, and also Kali and quartzite changes are also traceable here. From this example, you can have an understanding of multispectral and hyperspectral data. In multispectral spectrum, we can select those diapasons that, to a maximum extent, can reflect the characteristics of the spectrum. With hyperspectrum data, you can find the sensitivity of this data, allowing you to go deeper into detail. But the data is zoomed in with each iteration, which with each processing, you can trace the progress, and you should understand how much you will be able to process the data so that you can use properly the data. You have to understand the level of exploration. Companies sometimes make a mistake because they want to have high resolution for the whole fields, or hyperspectral data is applied when nothing is explored yet, wasting time and resources, which is not recommended. This slide shows that hyperspectrum data can be used directly. For example, we take it from ESGS library. You can generate a mask as such and compile it with our data. You can also use the mask with the spectrum analysis and a large number of minerals with the high likelihoods of appearance in our field, in the targeted area. However, an operator can also use a percentage to find out the likelihoods of having specific mineral in the field. Huge volume of data allows us to transform the data. We have the data that is stored in the cloud. Having the access to the cloud, we can consider some elements allowing us to have it to consider the deviation rates. We use pixel purity index, and the key component here It allows us to have a good contrast picture and classify certain minerals. Because we in Kazakhstan are targeted at exploration of rare metals, we have some REE bearing spectra. Well, I have satellite related data here. However, in spectrum analysis, we use similar characteristics for our measurements. Like in geochemistry, we can set up some indicators in terms of the size, field size, set of minerals, and to find out some elements which in certain characteristics in the closed diapason can yield you a very good analysis of existing minerals. You can choose the spectrum, and you can again through the mask combine it with metals and minerals with rare metals. For example, here is I.Darli deposit, where we measured the spectrum on the network through the network and measured the depth of absorption where we can destruct using math parameters to target specific items. So we can see the width, the depth of spectrum absorption, and this kind of removal, which allows us to kind of shift, which allows us to understand if we are close or far away from the ore body. With regard to some other minerals such as chlorides and sinicides, we can understand their proportion versus the other minerals, allowing you to do more analysis. Here we classified the data. We compared historical data with the latest exploration. The contouring is the same, which can be both a good sign and a bad sign. When we use satellite data and field data, we have the difference in analysis measured in 30 meters, and we have an average figure as a result. So the combination yields the best results. Sometimes our zones are completely overlapped. In this case, we can use texture analysis. Texture analysis allows us to make use of the data and highlight some structures. I can also share an example of AI. ARGIS has been doing quite well. Even Freiberg did it in Kosovo when we combine geological data from satellites and combine it with the field data. That's it. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm going to show you lineament analysis, which is an effective complex of combination of different types of mapping and geomorphological objects through the linear approach. Because in the majority of ore deposits, the structure, the control of the or concentration plays significant role. So for our linear analysis in the landscape, we can speak about tectonical breaks in deposits which are prone to tectonic changes can impact the landscape ultimately once they appear on the surface. I'm talking about the terrain which is explored and generated as a result of linear analysis. Here we see two cases for Kolsky semi-island and Onega semi-island. So linear analysis shows different levels of details where we are use as a basis the maps, smaller maps, which allow us to see the breaks for the whole region. If we use smaller scale, we can see more detailed analysis of the zones prone to breaks. Here is Kolsky semi-island analysis. Speaking of the methodology of this analysis, as a basis, we quite often use the results of radar analysis of the surface and optical sensoring or orthopter plan, which allows us to give texture characteristics in greater details compared with the digital terrain model. Due to the better geospatial resolution orthoplan, because it achieves 15 centimeters per pixel. Quite often, these maps have a lot of shadows, while digital model cannot be that accurate in terms of the number of pixels per centimeter. Interpretation of lineament analysis. You see two pictures which clearly show you that orthophoto shows you more lineaments with the which are longer, and at the same time you can find false lineaments in the forests, which is not typical for the digital model of terrain. Its drawback includes some holes which cannot be detected, which cannot be detected in the picture, unlike the digital picture. Most convenient statistical methods of lineaments includes the creation of maps. This includes lineaments of the northern and eastern fields, and the density of lineaments is addressed through the colors, where the density is the highest in the brown color. The chain of maximum or trends of density stands for the breaks on the surface with the typical negative forms of terrain. You can see it in another in the right picture. Next slide allows you to compare the results of the density mapping for the lineaments of all directions. The results are calculated. One is digital, another is orthophoto plan. Orthophoto plan allows to have a more detailed picture and better analysis of the background data, basic data. However, the digital map shows you a clear picture of the density trends. And as a result of these iterations, yellow lines stand for the axis of density trends and surface break zone. And the results of magnetic works can prove these conclusions if we compare magnetic exploration methods allows us to conclude that they coincide with the lineament gradients of the magnetic fields. These zones are usually interpreted as linear zones, linear uneven zones which break tectonic borders. Some slides from the projects that we have performed. One is Kurai Zone Mountain Altai with the lineament zones on the terrain in northern eastern and northern western areas. And you can see that the border areas between these two lineaments includes the deposits of copper, copper and quicksilver. These zones can be interpreted as linear zones of tectonic bridges, which play their role in distribution of the ore related minerals. This is another example from Magadan Oblast and Republic of Sakha. We have two zones of southern direction, lineament zones obtained through orthophotoplane ArcGIS imagery. If we look at the map of average density of lineaments, you will see the high correlation of deposits with the gold deposits in the bridges and in the contour geotectonic anomalies of the gold. If we compare it with the structural analysis of Kapchan deposit, we will see that sublinear deposits in their density coincide with the mineralized ore zones. At the same time, they are characterized by the linear bridges appearing on the surface and are characterized by specific forms of terrain. Some slides on the complex methods. The result of spectrum analysis shows the results of lineament analysis in the blue lines and good structural control in the western area. Another example, you can trace lineaments which we generated through the marking horizons in the linear analysis. This is another complexing methods which allowed us to find out the core of perfect system. This is the structural interpretation on each direction of a lineament and the role in evolution of terrain gold structure located in Republic of Sakha. In conclusion, I would like to highlight that all the results have been achieved through the distance censored methods, earth censored methods, which are proved by the field exploration works.
I'll say a few words about software. We use EnvirMap, Envy, ArcMap, and ArcGIS Pro. Envy enables us to run data analysis. It has a convenient interface, makes it easier to read data, It works with satellite data in various formats. So I remember when we just started working, we had issues with data being present in so many formats, but nowadays it's so much easier. You see spectral profiles, you can have tabular data, great diversity of instruments. It also has a library, can be used by different labs. They can run checks to see whether there are any discrepancies between spectrums. Another toolkit that we have also accessible through a convenient interface. There are directories. You also have mathematical processing of matrix-based data. And you can go beyond using satellite data. You can use any matrix. Any matrix you get after mathematical treatment. ArcMap enables us to visualize data, to run comparisons. There is a lot of analysis functionality embedded, many sub-programs that do mathematical analysis, structural analysis. It's quite similar to Envy, but it's a little bit less convenient when it comes to working with some parameters. ArcGIS Pro enables you to work with satellite data to calculate indexes. However, it's a bit more difficult to use. How I think any software takes some getting used to, so it's not about type of software per se, but about what you've been using. And I could keep talking about it for hours, for all the additional scripts you may use, how you can embed additional software, how to change formats. I guess that does it. I'll add a few words about our latest developments, about software development in particular. The first one is GeoTarget lineament. It allows you to work with raster images. The outputs from this software were used during my presentation earlier. So what makes it different from its competition is that it uses this variety of formats. It is raster data that was gained as a result of optical probing of Earth's surface, or it could be terrain data. Then it also gives output as shape files, which could be imported into ArcMap or to GIS. Density calculations, for that we use raster data as well. I think the key difference between GeoTarget and the competition is that it enables you to work with large files, large pictures, up to 40,000 pixels. The next product is called SOVA. This is what helps you to run spectrum analysis. It could be run automatically to process data from satellites, this Astra and Sentinel. It could also run semi-automatically. This is when the user sets several indexes and then analysis is performed on those. Here are some SOVA outputs. The third product I'd like to mention is GNOME Assist. This is a tool that helps you to work with raster data. For instance, this could be used when you process archive data. So you can turn raster into vector, then turn it into shape files, or you could use some other popular extension, and this is how you save up a lot of time. I'll continue talking about geological targeting with a focus on geological structural analysis. As I said, it's all about the structure. That is why we need to study it. As you perform analysis, you prioritize field-based methodologies, because it's all about the work you do in the field. The structure type will have impact on where, for instance, structural traps are situated. It enables us to create models that can predict what kind of deposit we are working with, and you can also run calculations to see how it has developed. This modeling enables you to see things you will be working with in the field later. And I often go to the tectonic lab to see how they do research into the development of structures. And, well, the laws of physics are the thing that guides us. Therefore, taking all of that into account, using these methods enables us to create models that make it easier to make discoveries. Nowadays, when we say models, we mean 3D models. And if done properly, this model then can be used as a foundation for other more comprehensive and more complex models. You use it for exploration because you can predict the location and direction of the traps. You can also do resource modeling. So there are certain ranges which you use in your work, and this is how you get your calculations to become more precise. Knowing the structural models enables us to find the right drilling angle When we work, we use modern tectonic physical modeling. So this was first created 20 years ago. Since then, this model has developed. The idea is that there are three stages. First, we see that there are splits in the rocks. This is when it starts. The second stage is when we see areas where cracks are concentrated. And the last one is when the cracks die out and there will be a main line developed which can be observed, based on which you can get to realize how the previous two stages went. And nowadays, recall there is a shift in terminology that previously we used to talk about so-called feather joints, but nowadays we have gone beyond that and we use so-called predictive joints instead. This is what we did for the Baimskaya area. You can see it's stage 1, stage 2, and the results were in line with the studies we did in the field. And now we are working on creating a 3D tomography model. This is what it looks like. And this gives us additional information on where ores of different kinds are localized. We think this avenue of work holds a lot of promise. So you can work at various scales. You can see them on the screen. Here are examples of information you can get working at those scales. This information is nothing new. The takeaway is that you need to have kinematic alignment between all of those. This is how you get the model to represent reality. Well, no model is perfect, but this is how you get it to better represent the reality. Field methods are at the base of everything we do, and structural experts, they will take everything into consideration, while geologists that do not have expertise in that may overlook many things. That's why you need to get specialists involved. An example of how structural analysis is performed. This is structural mapping. It was done in Mongolia based on aerial images. Now this is Spasskaya area in central Kazakhstan. Detailed mapping in Drazhne in Yakutia, Charat in Kyrgyzstan, and Madniuli in Georgia. So the structure is easy to see, can be studied. With structural polygenesis researched into, and we used to use cameras. Nowadays we have switched to drones, so which means that the geometry is 100% correct in this case, no human error. That data is processed by using standard structural analysis data. There is software in open access, and this is how you classify them by age, by geometry, how you create models. As you study the core, what you need to do, here are some examples. Some people think that stock work is just a bunch of chaotic cracks, but this isn't so. There is method to any stock work, and you can identify these methods. And once you've done that, you can build structural diagrams which will make your models more precise. However, your core sample needs to be properly oriented. What I mean is, the samples quite often are low quality. Microstructural analysis. I'm not talking about optical axis. This is what we used to do back in the Soviet days. In this case, we think that analyzing microstructural ones give you a lot of quality information. This is a gold mine, from a gold mine in Chukotka. Here we see different stages. First, it is frontal compaction, quartz, sulfides, but no gold. Stage 2, shifted to the right, with new elements added, still no gold. Stage 3, it has reversed to the left, and now we have gold in it. There are sulfides, there are cracks, and this is what we have developed for this structure. And previously nobody knew it. They would just assume things, and in our case we were able to create proper models. In our case, we wish to get an understanding of mineralization. So not all structures have mineralization. And if it is gold, for instance, then we want to see how it is. The left one is stockwork in sandstone, and it can be seen that these are shear structures. The second one, we see that is quartz, and initially it was believed to be quartz, but later we got to realize that there was gold in it. So, and once you've done that, you have a good understanding of where the gold is and where you need to look for it. Well, at times it may be empty, however, anyway, it all starts with mineralization. Same with Charat in Kyrgyzstan. So first they just presumed it was like that. They thought was left sheet towards the left, but we had another idea and we proved it.
Here is another example from Pestubia in northern Kazakhstan. I was involved into the mapping of its deposits, and Drajnaya deposits at Chukotka. Stockwork and belt-like structures. They are alike, although the geological nature of origin differs. For Drajnaya deposit, we compared it with the gold deposit of Delvik, and this method didn't work unless you explore the deposit. So these are folders, and they stand for the idea that the richest concentration of golds is located in these holes. It allows us to explore the direction of movement of gold bearing flows, because we are searching the gold, not quartz. You can find them in these stereograms. The final result includes these maps. We try to extract geological data and interpret it. But interpretation, desktop interpretation, has to be supported by field exploration to make sure that our interpretation was not a mistake. Lineaments and anomalies can be interpreted in either way, while our conclusions should be unbiased. The objective, the goal of geological structural analysis includes geological models which address the phases of the structural developments and forming of hydrothermal system with the ore processes reflected in the structures standing for deformation. This is Peschanka deposit, gold-bearing deposit, and different phases of deformation, with the gold in the bottom of the table only when the formation was completed to end up having the gold-bearing bodies. As soon as we obtain the reliable geological structural model, it gives us a chance for the focused knowledge about the step and the traps, geological traps. If we are familiar with the shifts, we know how to focus the traps. Chukotka deposit shows the known, by red lines, it shows the known stockworks given the gold stage, and tectonic physical analysis allows us to focus the extension structures. Here is a recent example from Georgia. We studied it in detail in the quarry. We realized that this is a multi-phase structure, and the blue dots, our focused dots, and we got feedback from our colleagues that confirmed our analysis. This is Magna-Uli ore and gold deposits. We analyzed it and focused different prospects. It could be interpreted in any way, and standing for gold-bearing quartz stockworks in the zone of main shifts. and projected stockworks. And the recent wells, exploration of those wells proved our forecast. We hope that we will have more confirmation from them. This is Drajne deposit. We created a shift-based model, which can be compared with the push-up model, with the structure of side bulge. It allowed us within this zone to see the fields with the ore stock work. When they drilled the wells, they found it in the blind zone. This is another example of the geological structural model. And on the left side, we see how our model can be compared with the breaches, which considered to be the ore controlling breaches, but they are not in fact. And we have the structural network of mineralization responsible for control of mineralization. I'm going to present on this topic in the afternoon. This is another deposit, Malmik. It is a quantity based on the amounts in percentage of mineralization, and it has a different structural step. I interpreted the structure, and it turned out that it has three directions: two existing structures, two bridges, and one extension, which could be compared with the rigid shifts and offside, and you can combine texture physics with the real deposits. We see the projected stockworks, which are not known yet, but if our projection is confirmed, we will learn about it. Geological structural analysis is scalable. Here is a picture from a Geological magazine addressing geological trends in ants, which is the area responsible for the large ore deposits. Different structures can control different amount in terms of concentration of the ore. So structural analysis is the basis for our targeting in our understanding. It brings us closer to the understanding of the trends in the structure and its focus. Can we get back to the first presentation? Just some final remarks. Unfortunately, we couldn't give all the materials, all the presentations. If you come to our stand, we will explain it in details. To conclude this session, I would like to refer to the focus once again. What kind of focus we're dealing with? Reduction of costs can be enabled through the reduction of geological risks. And this will allow you to be more effective in attracting investments, both domestic and foreign investments, and reduce the carbon trace with transition to the green energy. To be honest, it's not completely green. If in one region you achieve decarbonization, in another region you may end up having an environmental disaster. We cannot stop the progress, and the progress is not an even process. So the exploration of smart metals requires different solutions. You have to be fast. China has been preparing for that for 30 years. That's why they are ahead of all exploration and production, because they prioritized it. China has leadership in rare metals compared with Arabic states, holders of the oil reserves. So geological targeting and methods will allow us to be more efficient. The period of easy exploration is over, and we need to rely more and more on technologies. Given the dynamics and request for these services, the use of these algorithms and AI will likely turn into industrial standards. I would like to conclude with this comparison with two elephants bearing the targeting analysis, which should rely on accumulated archive data using verified information by modern methods, combined with the modern methods, censoring methods, distance censoring methods, and definitely the quality of the final interpretation using skilled experts for this task. I'm not sure if you will be able to translate what I'm going to say to exclude any self self-educated or less educated analysts for interpretation of geological data. So everything what relates to neuro technologies, AI, but we are facing the fifth industrial revolution, and we have to get used to that. Only then we will be able to avoid homemade expertise. Everything what is not included into this session, please come up and see us at the stand. Thank you so much.